Hey y'all, Ask Dr. Kirk, episode 6. Wow, the feedback I got back from episode 5, and mainly most of it was lighten up, Kirk. I got, too serious of a topic. My buddy Andy from Augusta, Georgia said, dude, vaccines, what the heck were you thinking? Just to show you, I'm not afraid of tackling the heavy topics, and I'm not afraid of tackling you either, Andy. How about that? Thanks. I get it, y'all. How about some lighter stuff? So I picked 2 fun questions out of the pile, just to kind of lighten up since we just did such a serious one. So we'll start off with Dave from Bullhead City, Arizona. Wow. Go Sun Devils. Dave asks, how important is it for youth to follow the speed limit? Great one, a public health question. Okay, so a lot of you guys know from this area that I am the medical director of our local health department. I love public health and all of its issues, and this falls quite under something that is in what's considered a public health physician. So there are people who do this for a living. I'm just the director. I don't necessarily do it for a living, but I oversee our local health department. But speed limits are actually set, if you didn't know, from state to state, and they're determined by engineering folks. So the engineers do their studies, and they look at traffic patterns, they look at roadways, they look at conditions, they look at all sorts of stuff like that, and they conduct all these big, long statistical studies. And they take those statistics, and then they go by, a lot of states will go by what's called the 85th percentile rule. And the 85th percentile rule is they take how fast folks are going, and 85% of those people, they try to set the speed limit somewhere around close to that. It's not an exact science, and some people will do it differently, but those rules are there for a reason. One of the things that they take into account when they're doing this calculation is they're doing the mortality rates. There's a new one. Mortality rates when it comes to driving. So motorized vehicles. When I start talking about the safety of motorized vehicles, it's a joke because, man, we are all rolling the dice and taking a risk whenever we get behind the wheel or behind the handlebars of any sort of motorized vehicle. The studies will tell you, and there's wonderful charts on this you can look up, that the mortality rates, meaning the percent chance of you dying, those rates start getting risk of death once you hit 15 miles per hour. 15. And then it grows incrementally as you go up to 20 miles an hour, 30 miles an hour. And that percent chance of you dying if you got into an accident at that speed continues to grow as the miles per hour grow till you reach all the way up to 60 miles per hour, which death at that point is almost imminent. I mean, it's really winning the lottery if you don't perish when you start getting up to speeds like 60 miles per hour. So right around 15 to 20 miles per hour, you're already risking your life. Miles per hour is what we use in the United States. If you're anywhere else, then I'd say kilometers, so 32 kilometers as opposed to 20 or wherever. I'm trying to be nice to everyone, my viewers, depending on where you are. Dave, I don't know what y'all do in Arizona. What y'all's length of measure? Cactuses, I assume. So that would be what, 20,000 cactuses or 20 miles per hour or 32 kilometers. There's your conversion rate right there. It is very important because following the law of the land is an important thing as far as our safety goes. Those studies also are separate from the studies that say how much percent chance when you have an airbag involved, when you are a restrained driver. That stuff is out there as well, but it doesn't improve a whole lot because the sheer physics of it is pretty darn bad. And if you want to get biblical about it, Romans chapter 13 says that we're supposed to obey the laws of the land. Now, of course, if you read Romans in context, it's going to assume that the authorities of your land are God-fearing and God-loving people. And so I guess that's kind of assumption we have to make about our society, but Romans 13 clearly says we're supposed to obey the laws of our land, because if we live in peace and harmony within the constraints and the confines of our society and how it's supposed to run, then that allows us to be at peace and be able to spread the gospel of the Lord. So there you go. If you ever your kids complain to you and you are in a God-fearing family, just simply say Romans 13, man. If you're violating the speed limit, you're actually sinning. How about that? So use that one, parents. Anyway, Dave, I hope that helps. I kind of danced around it a little bit, but very important. It's the answer to your question, Dave, from Bullhead City. Thank you for your question, buddy. So next question. This is a cool one, man. I got a question from Tom here in Hazelhurst, Georgia, who said, I heard that you are using hyperbarics in y'all's wound center. How in the world does that heal wounds? Great question. So yes, I work over at the wound center. I'm also the medical director of our wound center in Hyperbarics. Hyperbarics is a cool training that we got. Man, I can lecture to you about the science behind hyperbarics. But I'm just going to simplify it in the Dr. Kirk way that you guys ask of me. So very simply, we have these two giant glass tubes that are hyperbaric chambers. And what they do is we seal you inside those things, inside of a hospital. You're laying in a hospital bed, and I slide you in like a tray of cookies, I guess. And you got a TV, and you can watch movies and everything and all stuff. But we seal that, and then what happens is you're in an atmosphere of 100% oxygen, and 100% oxygen is much more than regular us walking around. I mean, the 100% oxygen, we're not nowhere even close out here in regular atmosphere. But we then pressurize this hyperbaric chamber, and it's almost as if we're dropping you to the bottom of the oceans. We actually call it dives. So we have these dives when you have a session. So we're diving you to 2 ATA. So just think about like I'm dropping you to the bottom of the ocean, that kind of pressure. And what that does is that just smashes the oxygen into you. Into your system, into everything, your tissues, your bones. It even penetrates bones. 100% oxygen, of course, is awesome for all sorts of processes, all sorts of metabolic things that go on in our body, and it helps heal tissues. So think about it this way. Someone who comes to my wound care center, they typically have a wound that won't heal. And when you have a wound that won't heal, it's because, maybe, your body doesn't quite have the reserves to heal. It doesn't have the capacity to heal. And a lot of that is from some of the poor choices we made. How else does oxygen get to a wound? Let's say we have a wound on my foot, okay? How does oxygen get to those tissues in order to heal? Well, it rides the highway that God gave us, which is the bloodstream. And the bloodstream just flows. Oxygen is going to climb on these wonderful cars called hemoglobin. I'm really simplifying this, but it's awesome. So it rides that super highway that God gave us and gets to that wound and is able to heal us up, okay? Well, as we live here in the South and make our lifestyle choices and eat the way that we do and, smoke and don't exercise and, put butter on our mayonnaise and all that kind of stuff. Well, we mess that highway up. So over time, that highway that oxygen needs in order to travel to get to there is full of potholes and full of tight corridors now and tight turns and all sorts of awful things because of what we did to ourselves. So in the hyperbaric chambers, a lot of times somebody gets in there because they can't get that wound to heal. Well, when I smash oxygen into you in a hyperbaric dive, I'm skipping the highway. So oxygen just goes directly into that. But it only just goes to that tissue wound either. It goes all over. So people get all these kind of great side effects, I'll say, from being in there. Oxygen to your tissues is great. Some people will say, man, their lungs feel great. Man, my heart feels really strong. Man, I feel good after these things. Well, yeah, I'm smashing 100% oxygen into you. So it's a pretty cool science. Another bonus thing is when we have bone infection. When there's bone infection that we're running in all these IV antibiotics to try to heal some bone infection called osteomyelitis, Well, I'm smashing in 100% oxygen into those bones as well. Guess what? 100% oxygen is a toxic atmosphere to bacteria. They don't like it. So along with the IV antibiotics we're giving you to treat bone infection, we're also smashing in oxygen and making an atmosphere that the bacteria hate. So it helps kill bone infection along with the other treatments you're being given. So that's another use. So we're on the cutting edge of this stuff. I feel like we're actually, there's only certain reasons insurance is going to cover for you to be in that chamber. But we're gaining more and more of those over time. So look for some really cool ways to use this chamber. Some of the Olympic athletes were using it for recovery. You see some NFL teams are starting to do it now. I'm not at a point right now where I can take my local high school quarterback and shove him in there after Friday night, much to my local coach's chagrin, but we're working towards it. So anyway, I hope that answered your question, Tom. Come on by. I'm happy to talk to you a lot more about hyperbarics. It's a really cool science. So anyway, these were two easy ones. Hardly any controversy with that one at all, right? So happy to do another episode of Dr. Kurt. Y'all keep the questions coming. These are so fun. And I'm going to try to answer them in the best way that a simple, silly doctor can answer them for you and make it as simple as it is, because I got to explain it in a simple way for me. So happy to share it with you. Love y'all, mean it. Jesus loves you. Bye.